Welcome to the Introduction to VeriSM webinar today, hosted by BCS, the Chartered Institute for IT, and Claire Agata from Scopism. This is an overview session, which Claire Agata is going to talk you through VeriSM and the background to it and the benefits of VeriSM. So do feel free to ask any questions. There is an option within this system to type in a question. I will be handling those questions, and then Claire will be answering them in the last 15 minutes of the webinar. So we're going to start soon, and then once the webinar is complete, then we will field some questions with Claire. Claire, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Sharon, and thank you to everybody who's joined us today. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I hope this is a good session for you. As Sharon said, I'm going to be talking for about 30 minutes just to introduce VeriSM, tell you a little bit about where it's come from, what we're trying to achieve with VeriSM and how the programme is evolving, and then at the end we'll have 15 minutes for questions. So if something comes up as I'm speaking, if you type it into the chat box, and then at the end we'll go through as many as we can, and if we run out of time there, then we will actually update the answers afterwards and circulate those to the attendees. Sorry, I'll just progress my slides. So I thought I'd start with a little bit of information about myself. So I've been working in the field of service management for more than 15 years. During that time, I've held a number of different roles. I've worked on a help desk in change management. I've been responsible for implementing service management in organisations, and I've also held consultancy roles and training roles. So for the last 10 years, I've been the lead tutor and director of ITSM Zone, which is a training company. So that's been a fantastic opportunity for me to come into contact with lots of organisations through that role. And I'm also the director at Scopism Limited, which is a content-focused organisation. So we produce content like the Service Integration and Management Body of Knowledge, which is available via Scopism as a free download. So I was approached in 2017 by a new organisation called the IFDC, and asked if I would like to be the lead on a project to really just take a new look at service management and take a fresh look at service management and see if we needed to evolve the way we approach service management within the digital age. So that was a wonderful opportunity, I thought, to really address some of the frustrations that I felt in the past with some of our traditional service management practices. If you want to keep in contact with me, you'll find me on Twitter at Claire Agata. You can contact me on LinkedIn. I'm a very strong proponent of community. I'm very active on social media, and I think that's possibly why I get the badge from HDI for being one of the people who talk the most in service management. But that was a very nice thing to have, and we did win the ITSMF UK Thought Leader Award last year as well for the work that we'd done with SIAM. So just a little bit about my background, because throughout my career I've been on a service management journey and embraced lots of new and different approaches to service management, and I've seen kind of the world change as DevOps has come in, Agile, Lean, and really my journey is very similar, I think, to the one that the whole industry has been going on, and a lot of that is the driver behind VeriSM. So the first kind of driver for VeriSM is this idea of digital transformation, and digital transformation is such a buzzword at the moment. You know, everybody's talking about it, but as with these popular expressions, quite often nobody really seems to know what it means. But really, the way we define digital transformation is it's the impact that digital technology is having on all of our business processes. So IT isn't within the domain of the IT department anymore. IT is actually embedded within everything that the organisation does. You know, and if you think about how you interact with your bank, if you think about how you order a pizza, if you think about how you book a holiday, you can start to see the impact that digital transformation is having on everybody's lives. And businesses are starting to kind of wake up and pay attention to this and think, you know, actually, we need to start getting ready and we need to be aware of the impact of digital transformation, whether they are public or private sector. You know, private sector, there tend to be some real competition drivers, but in the public sector as well, there's much more demand and much more expectation that services will be available through digital channels. So at this point, I would like to ask a question, and I would like to ask you all if the organisation that you're currently working with has a digital transformation strategy. So if you could just use the raise your hand button, I'll just give you a minute to do that, and then Sharon's going to let me know how many of you have raised your hands to say if your organisation has a digital transformation strategy. Okay, have we got a count there, Sharon?
We do. It is 12.
12, okay, so that's maybe about a fifth of the people that are on this call that have got a digital transformation strategy. That's something that I would expect to see grow fairly quickly. So many organisations are looking at digital transformation, they're wondering what it means for them, but it does take a little while to evolve that actually into a digital transformation strategy that's going to help you cope with this. So that was the kind of the first driver for VeriSM, is this impact of digital transformation on organisations of all types and size. And another one of the drivers, another area that we looked at, was how quickly technology is changing and the impact that that's having on the products and services that we offer. So again, a lot of this is quite buzzwordy, but we are talking about things like artificial intelligence, robotic process automation. What are the impact that things like this, what's the impact that this is going to have on the products and services that we offer? And this is a huge, huge change for organisations. It's not talking about, you know, fairly basic technical change, implementing new technical systems. It's looking at actually transforming business processes. So an example here is that one of the VeriSM authors came from a service provider, an outsourced service provider organisation, and with the new contracts that they're agreeing with their customers, each new contract will include a role that's dedicated to process automation, and the aim of that role is to reduce the human headcount and increase the amount of automation within processes. So technology is actually having this large impact on how we work, and again, companies aren't necessarily exploiting that to its full advantage. So that was another driver for VeriSM. And then the last kind of big driver was the impact that all of this is having on us as individuals. It's changing the skills that are required to be a service management professional. It's changing the way we think about our products and services. We now have to be entrepreneurs. We have to be business focused, more so than there's ever been necessary before. And in VeriSM, we talk about this concept of the T-shaped employee. So somebody who's got very deep specific knowledge in one area, but then is a generalist in lots of other areas. And this is becoming more and more of a requirement. It's no longer enough to have a single technical specialism or a single management specialism. We need to have a broad range of skills. So when we were looking at this as the author group for VeriSM, we felt that there is actually a need to update service management because of the technical changes, because of the fact that products and services are now right across the business with a digital element, and because of the impact that's having on the individuals who work in this industry, we felt the time was right for something new, and that something new was VeriSM. So this is something that we kind of put together to try and visualize what the world looks like for service management professionals at the moment. So this is certainly something that I've seen in my career, and it's certainly something as well that our customers see in their careers, because the technology that we work with has become a lot more complex, but also how we work within service management has become much more complex over the last, I guess, 3 to 5 years. So if we go back maybe 7 or 8 years, somebody coming into the world of service management would do a service management certification, they'd maybe take some ITIL training, and that would be enough for them to do their job successfully. Whereas now, people are expected to know about things like ITIL, but also to know about Lean, Agile, DevOps, SIAM. There seems to be something new that comes out every week. So it's that kind of, how do we make sense of all of this? How do we know whether Agile or Waterfall is most appropriate for a particular project or a particular service that we're working on? How do we make sense of all of this, and how do we keep our skills current? So this is a really significant challenge. We did some market research, and we asked I think nearly 4,000 people, do they feel that current service management best practice is enough for the future? Has service management kind of kept pace with the changes in our working environment? And actually, only a quarter of the people who responded thought that the existing practices had kept up with the change in IT and business landscapes. So quite a strong market perception there as well, that the existing service management frameworks maybe weren't completely filling the need, and perhaps there is a gap where we can add more value. So just thinking about that, then another question for you all, if you want to raise your hands again, is your organisation at the moment using more than one management framework? So are you perhaps using ITIL and Agile, or have you got a DevOps team that's appeared within the organisation? So if you want to put your hand up again, and Sharon will do the count for me.
Uh, 32.
32. So that's pretty much half of the people who are on this webinar who are using more than one management framework. So it does just show how the world is changing and how organisations are trying lots of new things in order to try and deliver more value to the customers, which is, you know, it's absolutely fantastic. It's an evolving mindset, and really what it underlines for me is the fact that no single management framework is perfect. And in order to deliver real value, we need to draw on lots and lots of different areas of best practice, good practice. We need to try lots of things, but we also need a way to do that in a sensible structure. And that was really where we tried to go to with VeriSM. So we've talked a bit about digital transformation, and with VeriSM, what we wanted to do was create an approach that would look at service management for the digital age. So most of any organisation's products and services now are in some way enabled or underpinned or improved by technology. So one of the things that we wanted to do with VeriSM was actually change the focus of service management. So we made a deliberate and conscious decision to move away from talking about IT service management, because one of the discussions we had within the author team was, when we talk about IT, what do we actually mean? And for the majority of the people in the group, IT means a department. it's a function within the business, it's an area. Quite often it's seen as a silo. So because these products and services are business products and services, we wanted to create a service management approach that reflected that. So VeriSM looks at all areas of the organisation. It looks at the fact that these are business processes, these are business products and services underpinned by technology, but we need to be looking at them from the business perspective rather than from the IT perspective. So VeriSM, as you can see here, is a service management approach for the digital age that helps service providers to create a flexible operating model to meet desired business outcomes. VeriSM is very much about each organisation creating something that is unique to them, that works for them, and that actually meets their requirements. We get asked quite a lot what VeriSM actually means. So VeriSM is a word. It's a style of art, and it's a realist style of art. So the definition that we found for VeriSM talked about the fact that a VeriSM approach to art portrays the real world, warts and all. And we thought that that was a really nice way of looking at it, because quite often with management practices, we think about a perfect world, but we want to create something that's for the real world. But because we love acronyms in service management as well, it does actually stand for value-driven, evolving, responsive and integrated service management. So with VeriSM, what we want to do is equip organisations to be able to take advantage of all the good management practices that exist at the moment, but also to evolve and change when new things emerge. So what we are suggesting with VeriSM is that organisations look beyond a single management framework, look beyond where they are at the moment and try and be much more aware of things like emerging technologies and the impact that that has on them as well. So what we're saying with VeriSM is, as an organisation, you need to assess your environment and then decide what management practices will support us, what emerging technologies are relevant for this situation, and constantly change the way that you think when it's required in order to deliver value as an organisation. So VeriSM is very much about taking a step back and not saying, you know, we're trying to be the perfect DevOps organisation, we're trying to be the perfect agile organisation. It's changing the focus to what your organisation actually exists to do, and then allowing you to take advantage of different management practices, different technologies in order to deliver that. And I think, you know, cloud is a really good example of something that not that long ago was an emerging technology. There were many organisations that were extremely suspicious of it, whereas now cloud first is pretty much the most common strategy, and some of the most secure and highly regulated industries have actually embraced cloud. So the organisation behind VeriSM is the International Foundation for Digital Competencies, or IFDC, and the IFDC is a non-profit foundation. BCS are one of the co-founders. Also we have Exin, APMG and Van Haren are involved as well. And the IFDC has actually taken the lead on the VeriSM programme, and IFDC will be the steward for the VeriSM approach. It'll sponsor further publications, it will create community so that we can start to share VeriSM stories and kind of move VeriSM forward. So the IFDC itself is governing VeriSM, but it's doing that, I guess, for the good of the industry. It's not doing it to create large amounts of revenue. It is very much about what do we need in order to be ready for this digital age, what skills do people need and what knowledge do people need. And the author team for VeriSM was huge. So the first book's been written and is available now. That was published in November 2017, and that introduces the VeriSM concepts. And the author team that we had for that was about 60 people. And it was really, really important to me as the chief architect that we had a really diverse author team. So we had people from all over the world, different ages, different backgrounds. It was really, really essential to me that we had a big range of opinions. We had a lead author team, which was myself, Suzanne van Hove and Randy Steinberg, and we also had some input from Rob England, who's the IT skeptic, who's doing a lot of good work in the DevOps area. But then we were supported by a huge number of volunteers, and really I can't thank them enough, because the contribution that they made was enormous, and VeriSM is as good as it is, I think, because of the work that they put in. You can see here some of the companies that were involved with VeriSM as well. So you might recognise some of the other industry bodies like the IT Service Management Forum and the Service Desk Institute. They made a wonderful contribution. But you can also see that we had some large companies there like Microsoft. We've got some government bodies there. We've got some industry vendors, so some software companies. And again, what we were looking for here was this real broad range of perspectives. And it was very interesting to work with vendors like Sherwell, ServiceNow, Happy Signals, because they're the companies that are supporting organisations as they transform how they think about service management. So it was very, very interesting to get their perspective and see how their customers are changing, because this is a good indication of how the actual service management world is changing. So just to introduce some of the VeriSM key concepts. The first thing that we said we wanted to be really, really clear on is that from a VeriSM perspective, an organisation is a service provider. So an organisation exists to deliver products and our services to its consumers, and that might be for profit, it might be not for profit, it might be at a local or national government level, but it's the organisation itself which is the service provider. So we want to get away from this idea of IT being a service provider and treating the rest of the business like its customers. That creates a silo, it creates a division, and IT is not just within the remit of the IT department anymore. You know, we hear talk of things like shadow IT, where maybe the marketing team have gone out and commissioned their own analytics application to look at how people are visiting the website. It's still IT. So from a VeriSM perspective, IT, HR, sales, finance, marketing, logistics, these are all part of an organisation's capabilities, and they all need to work together to deliver value through products and services. We need to stop talking about IT services and IT treating the business like its customer, because it's not helpful. And I think an example here where we can look at something that we talk about as an IT service, but really it's a business service, is there's a US-based organisation that used to publish recipe magazines, and the print sales were declining, so it decided to take a different strategic approach and offer the recipes online, but offer them as a weekly update that was specifically tailored to users' requirements. Now, there's a lot of organisations would treat that as an IT project, but you know, we can all see it's absolutely not. That company's sales department, customer service, marketing, nutrition experts would all have been involved with that. It's underpinned by technology, and IT specialists would have been involved, but we are talking about business products and services. So VeriSM changes our focus. We're not talking about IT service management anymore. We're talking about how all of the organisation's capabilities contribute to delivering value. And what you can see on this screen here is the VeriSM model, which is really at the heart of the VeriSM approach. So everything's driven by governance. And again, governance is a commonly used term, but often quite misunderstood or quite badly applied. When we talk about governance, what we're talking about is, what does the organisation exist to do? What is its strategic purpose, its vision, its mission? Because that should dictate everything that we do. And from a VeriSM perspective, governance then drives what we call service management principles. And each organisation will evolve its own set of service management principles, which will be different for every organisation because every organisation has a different strategic objective. But service management principles will be defined for things like risk, use of finance, use of resources, change, security. And what those service management principles do is they outline what's important to the organisation. So some organisations might be very cautious about risk, whereas other organisations might be able to be a bit more relaxed about risk because of the industry that they work within. So those service management principles then allow the product teams, the service teams within an organisation to work in whatever way they want to. You know, you can work waterfall, agile, you can use DevOps, ITIL, lean, as long as you stay within the guardrails that those service management principles set. So this is an innovation from a VeriSM perspective. It's giving product and service teams the freedom to work in the most appropriate way for them, as long as they stay within those guardrails. So it's a much more liberated way of working. So organisations will create their management mesh then based on what they're using, and the management mesh includes a range of management practices. It includes the emerging technologies as well as the resources and the environment of the organisation. So it's about blending all the ways that we're working and adding new things into the mesh when we need to. Still all driven by the consumer, so you can see consumer requirements, you can see consumer feedback, and there's a high level life cycle there, which won't be a surprise to any of you as service managers. Define, produce, provide, respond. The key is how we work using the management mesh and how we evolve the management mesh. So some of the benefits you can see here, benefits for organisations. One of the big things for me and the early feedback that we've had that people really value is that it's helping organisations to make sense of the range of management practices that they're using. So rather than trying to force a way of working onto their products and service teams, it's giving them the freedom to work in new ways. And it also kind of protects any investment that they've made. It's not saying throw out everything that you've done already. It's saying, well, you've got some good ways of working, but what can we add to that that's actually going to improve things? And from an individual perspective, we talked about those challenges that we're all experiencing in terms of what's expected from us as service management professionals, and having that VeriSM approach can actually give you a new way of looking at things. So there's some real benefits, and the initial feedback that we've had has been extremely positive. There is a kind of a roadmap for VeriSM. There is a suite of products that come along with it. So the first VeriSM book has now been published. That's available through Amazon. It's available through the publisher Van Haren. I'm not sure if BCS has got a bookshop as well, but if it does, then I'm sure it's available there. There is a suite of training that's some of it's live, some of it's already in development. So the foundation certificate in VeriSM gives you a good introduction to VeriSM and looks at service management principles, looks at why service management is so important, service culture. So the foundation certificate is available now. If you already hold a service management certificate, so you've got some awareness of service management principles, so if you've got something like ITIL or ISO 20000, you can actually take a bridging exam, which is the VeriSM Plus certificate, and that'll actually bridge you across into the VeriSM scheme. And if you are somebody who is very new to service management, so perhaps a graduate or somebody who's just started within the service management area, somebody who's maybe had a career change, the Essentials certificate gives you that introduction to service management and why it's so important. And you can actually take Essentials and then take Plus at a later date to get the full VeriSM foundation. So you can see the link there, and Sharon, I'm sure, has got more information, and you can contact BCS if you want any more information as well. This year the author team has reconvened. We've got even more people this year involved, so we're working on the next book, which will be VeriSM Applied, and that one goes into more detail about how to actually work with VeriSM in an organisation, and we'll have some good detailed information in there, and we'll also have some case studies. So we're working with early adopters to get some really good examples in there of how companies are being successful with VeriSM. So that's due to be published Q3 this year, and then there'll be some further training courses. So VeriSM Professional will be a higher level training course, and ultimately VeriSM Leader as well. So that's everything I've got to say. So thank you everyone for listening, and we've now got 15 minutes for questions. So Sharon, I'll hand over to you, and if you'd like to let me know if there's any questions.
Sure, we've got a couple in already. How do you intend to overcome the same issue that ITIL suffers from, in that it is seen as a great framework but struggles for traction with senior senior IT management? How will you convince senior business managers that VeriSM has a place at the table?
We certainly want to convince senior managers at the business level, not just within IT, that VeriSM is going to add real value and help them produce digital products and services. We've been contacted by a number of organisations who actually want to work with us as early adopters for VeriSM, and the type of people that have been contacting us are they're at the senior level, but they're working on things like transformation programs. So I think with anything, you know, ITIL, VeriSM, whatever it might be, it's a case of selling the benefits. But certainly with the organisations that we're currently talking to, they're really struggling with this concept of digital transformation. They're really struggling with this idea that how do we balance our current service management capabilities with the fact that the development team are working agile, and then we've got a DevOps team over here who aren't really talking to them. So it is about giving them a new approach and a new way of looking at things that's going to actually help to bring all of this together. But for each organisation, it is a case of understanding what's their unique business problem. And at the moment, it does seem to be related to pressures around digital transformation.
Thanks for that. We've got another question here. It says, a really good presentation, Claire, thanks. How do you anticipate VeriSM will hold its own amongst all the other standards and frameworks?
That's a really good question.
It not just be another buzzword that people quote, don't really understand. It's still on the block.
That's very true. And do you know, this was one of the very early discussions that we had with the author team, was about, is this what the world needs? Because when we were kind of doing the initial planning, and we were sort of looking at what's required, we were doing the market research, and that there were quite a few of us who thought, actually, maybe the last thing that the world needs at the moment is another buzzword, because the environment is complicated enough, and people are baffled enough. I know, running a training business, we get people coming to us and saying, I genuinely don't know what course I'm supposed to be studying, you know, what's going to help me move on in my career. So we were very conscious that we didn't want to add complexity to an already complicated situation. And the way that we looked at this differently was, we said, okay, we're not going to write another framework. We were very deliberate about calling VeriSM an approach, and what we wanted VeriSM to allow organisations to do is to take a step back and think, what exactly is it that we are trying to achieve. Because once you understand that, and once that's communicated through the organisation, you can then give your teams the freedom to go and work in different ways, but integrate that into your service management model. So we kind of felt, and we hoped, and based on the initial feedback, I think we've been fairly successful with that, is we hoped that we would give people almost a way of navigating the maze or making sense of the complexity that there is at the moment, and that was how we wanted to differentiate VeriSM.
Okay, one last question for you, Claire, and then we've got a couple for Chris, who is the product manager here at BCS for VeriSM.
Okay.
So last one for you is how can we measure benefits using VeriSM? Also, for VeriSM Applied, how can individuals contribute with their service management journey?
Okay, so the first question is about measuring the benefits of using the VeriSM approach, and to a certain extent that's going to depend on why the organisation is actually choosing to work with VeriSM. So it depends what business problem you're actually trying to resolve, but certainly what we would expect to see from working with VeriSM is freedom for product and service teams, but a much more integrated view. So breaking down silos across the organisation, much more focus on collaboration between the business capabilities. So that would then lead to better and faster value from products and services. But as I said, the big thing is going to be understanding your governance and what you're actually trying to achieve, because that will then lead to the outcomes that you want to deliver and the benefits that you expect to see. For the second question, how do people actually contribute? Sharon, we'd need to put them in touch with me. So I don't know if you can collect an email address and then pass that on to me.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Sorry.
Yes, we can pass that on to you. Chris, a question for you. Where can you actually get the ebooks for VeriSM? Found several ebook variations with similar prices and different titles. I'd rather self-study than do online courses, but the material doesn't seem to be readily available anywhere. I don't mind paywalling courses, those they work but there's no clear study guide anywhere. Thank you. So bit of clarity on that.
Good afternoon, everybody. My first chance to speak. Thank you, Claire, for taking us all the way through that. This is a great question, actually. There is an emerging and growing amount of content. I think Claire referenced that at the start of the webinar. Our publishing partner, Van Haren Publishing, who was also a co-founder of the IFDC, which was referenced earlier, is responsible for publishing all of our content. At the moment, we're limited to a book, which can be downloaded from the Van Haren website, and we will be putting links onto the BCS Bookshop or the BCS web pages in March when there's a larger portfolio of content. To the second point about self-study, our primary focus is always to support the accredited training providers with what we do. It's our main rationale, but we do recognise there are always going to be a number of people who would like to self-study rather than go through a trainer. To that end, there will be a self-study guide that will be published. The target date is the 28th of February. However, if I could ask whoever raised that question, talk to us again in the middle of March when all of the bookshop links and the self-study content will be available on the BCS website. We'll be delighted to help you out in that objective.
And then one final question for you, Chris. Why would a candidate attend a 3-day foundation course when they can do 2 one-day essential and plus courses to achieve the same certification?
Well, that's a great question. The Essentials course is targeted probably not at service management professionals, but those people that want an overview of the VeriSM principles. They may be holding middle or senior management roles, and like all such middle and senior managers, need a general overview of all of the components that they're managing on a day-to-day basis. It's not really designed to be targeted for completely new start individuals, although as the person that's asked the question, you correctly identified, that is a route that you could do. You could do two one-day courses and 2 exams. We would be happy. It's got a full equivalency, excuse me, with the foundation certificate. What we should say, and I think Claire did say this, but I'll reinforce it, the VeriSM Plus certificate is designed as a bridge or an add-on for candidates coming in from other service management disciplines, including ITIL, ISO 20K, etc. So I think you would need, as a candidate, you'd need to make your own decision on that. We're already seeing evidence that some training providers may be looking to cram or squeeze VeriSM Foundation into a 2-day course. So what I would do is suggest that you look at the market, see what the course availability is likely to be. We think it is a 3-day course, but if you're prepared to put in a long day, maybe it can be condensed into a 2-day course. We're attempting not to be prescriptive with VeriSM as a framework. In the same way, we don't want to be completely prescriptive in how you arrive at your own personal objectives. So take a look on the website, on APMG's website, on Exin's website. Have a look at the program as it stands now and make your own choices. I hope that's not too vague an answer. And clearly, if you do have further detailed questions, we're always happy to answer them for you.
So I'd just like to take this opportunity now to thank Claire very much for running this session for BCS today. It was very much appreciated, and I hope that everybody found it of great use. But thank you once again, Claire. And if anybody has any questions, then please feel free to email them into myself. There's going to be a follow-up email sent to everybody, so feel free to get in touch with me. That's sharon.pillai@bcs.uk. But in the meantime, thank you very much for everybody's time today. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.